Okay, so yesterday we went through the process of working on this rifle with Anthony. Now, this particular situation is one where there was a little bit of doubt there. Anthony wasn't sure whether he was the problem or the rifle. Now, he had done his best with the rifle, and he was fairly confident that it wasn't the rifle and that the last piece of the puzzle was him. But this is where a lot of us get stuck. Most of us have been in this position. So anyway, he fired his groups yesterday, and if we have a look here, there's his first group, and it's got a bit of lateral stringing to it. So this is after his fouling shots. So there's a little bit of possible error from him, so he's just getting comfortable behind the rifle. And we move on to the next group. We've got two close together and one just off. It's still a fairly good group. Just for the average hunting rifle, you know, you'd be very, very happy with that out to about 400 yards. And if you wanted to, you could push that out to 600 yards. But in this case, Anthony wants to get the rifle shooting better than this because he wants to shoot further. He lives in an alpine region, so he needs to be able to take those long shots. Now, as we cross over here, again we have these two shots close together and then one shot further away. So then we've got this little bit of doubt settling in. Is it me? Is it the rifle? And then, so what I've done is I've given him this more powerful rifle, which is quite the opposite of what would normally be done, where you'd give the person a 308 and say, here, shoot this, see how you go. They shoot that, they feel confident, but then when they go back to their magnum again, that confidence goes away. Well, I've gone the other way in this situation. We've gone up to the 358 Norma. It's got a horrible stock on it for recoil, but anyway, he shot this really, really good group here. So it's also brought all that learning together in one very harsh lesson, and he really has risen to the challenge where he's really focused on his technique and he shot well. So what we have here is a rifle. The barrel looks quite heavy on it, but it's not, because it's such a large bore. The actual hole down the bore is very, very wide, so it's actually just a medium weight barrel. It's a fairly light rifle. The Weatherby stock is piss poor for recoil. It actually accentuates felt recoil. So we've got a lighter rifle than Anthony was just shooting, a stock design which accentuates felt recoil. The rifle will really jump, and we've also got a cartridge which is a lot heavier. So we've got a 225 grain bullet here, travelling at 80 feet per second. What I want Anthony to do is to dry fire the rifle a couple of times, and then he can fire one shot off target, and then we can put a couple of shots on target and actually see how he's grouping, and we can start to really pull apart these errors. Now, if we had gone to a 308 caliber rifle, the problem with that, I mean, it's a very, very good rifle for training, and you do see that in a lot of training videos and so forth, and for a time that is quite important. But Anthony's sort of at that next level where he's doing quite alright with that type of rifle. He's got a varmint rifle which he's going really well with. We're getting up into this magnum territory now, so we've just got to work on perspective and get that comfortable for him. So it seems an odd way to do it, but it does work. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. What's interesting is how quickly we get serious once you've fired a gun like that. Or as you go to fire it first, all of a sudden the checks become that much more critical. You think, holy shit, have I done this, have I done that? And so then we cross over to his final group here. So now he's back to a 7mm Remington Magnum again. He's got 2 through 1 hole, so he's actually, his technique is really refined as much as it can be. But then we've got this one flyer still. So what does that tell us? It tells us that the problem is with the rifle in some way. So what I did after that was I took the rifle home, I did the 1 o'clock test just to make sure that it is actually sitting true in its bedding platform. If you don't know about the 1 o'clock test, have a look at the rifles book. That's my first book. The test is shown in there. It's also utilised in the accurizing book, and it's also shown in the Remington M700 troubleshooting video. But I wanted to check this just to make sure that Anthony had done his checks properly. So when I went through it, I actually saw, yes, he has done the checks. It was sitting nicely in that bedding platform. There's a good imprint in the bottom there. so it's going really well in the aluminium chassis. Now, the trigger's set very well, the magazine's free, it's not pinched up or bound anywhere, so that was fine. But then when I looked at his ammunition, that's where I came across a major problem. In this rifle, Anthony was using Norma brass to make his hand loads. Now, we often think of Norma brass as being very high quality, but in this case the brass at the neck was very, very thick. Now, even though this chamber, the Remington chamber on this is maximum SAMI, so it's full loose tolerances, they're very good tolerances, that brass was so thick that it was still struggling to release the projectile. So as it released the projectile was fighting against the case as it left and entered into the lands. So that really jacks up the pressures and it causes all sorts of problems with harmonics. Now, in the past this rifle had been used with a suppressor, and I can tell you that it would have only taken 1 thou of carbon caking, that's very, very little carbon caking, to really jack the pressures up further. And that's possibly why when Anthony was experimenting, he may not have been able to go up any faster with his loads. And I was suspicious of the loads because they're down around 29, 70 feet per second. And this particular rifle with this recent batch and the current practices with their reaming, normally it's able to do a little bit more than that. So the next step is to actually refine those hand loads. We'll switch to Hornady brass just to speed things up. We've 5-formed some ammunition very quickly, made up some loads. The run out on those loads is next to nothing. So we're ready to go again. But that's just something to watch for with the hand loadings. There's little things that can catch you out. So although someone may be talking to you about this is the greatest quality and that, you could have the best brand of dies and the best brass, but unless you check these things for yourself, it means squat. So make sure you do your own checks and just don't focus on brand names whatsoever. Look at what is right in front of you and then work with that. And then you can proceed to actually start making these good loads. But remember, all of this is covered in the book series, so just read and follow the steps, just bit by bit you'll work through it. So if you have a look here, you'll notice that a projectile will not pass into this once fired case. The neck is simply too tight. In that case, pressures can be quite dangerous. It plays merry hell with ES and it can really ruin accuracy. So that was just a generic hand load, but it was about getting it right. So yeah, do make sure you do all your checks with your brass. I'm really not a great fan of all the fancy talk that guys come up here with, and they tell me they got this brand and that. It's just all bullshit to me. That was just the first load out the gate. I anticipated what the jump needed to be, the powder charge, and we just use a very basic branded case. And I don't really give a shit what people think about yeah, these fancy brands. It's just, you know, keep it basic, keep it simple, do the work properly. So that was loaded with Lee dies, and Steph did the final seating this morning. She reported that run out was 0. So there you go.